I'm sure some of you know I'm a plant styling and decor icon. Well, if you didn't know, now you do, and you can check my previous video where I share plant styling and decor tips that might potentially make you yourself a plant styling icon as well. But yeah, regardless of me being the plant styling icon that I am, I found that there are certain plants that are actually really challenging to style. These plants, in my opinion, do not complement the space. In fact, they might even make a space look a bit off. There's just something about the way they grow, about the way they present, about the way they look that can make it really challenging to style them in a way that is palatable to the senses and our perception. And today we are going to be exposing those plants. I'm going to be exposing those plants, and you yourself will also see why and how these plants can be challenging. They're probably what is making your space look off. Ladies and gentlemen, how on earth is any human being supposed to plant style this? This is a Philodendron paraiso. She's an easy plant. In fact, I recommend her. She grows really fast. But the problem is that this plant looks a bit too unruly. She doesn't have a defined structure, so she honestly finds it difficult to fit into any space. One thing I've come to realize, and this is a tip for you, is plants that have like a defined structure, they're either spreading or trailing downwards or pointing upwards. Those plants are actually very easy to style and typically will fit into any space depending on the look you're trying to achieve. Whereas this auntie, yes, she's a climbing plant, but at the same time she looks wobbly. You know, her leaves, her petals, they just don't look uniform in appearance, and it can be difficult to figure out where to keep this babe where she doesn't look like a hot mess. And that seems to be the issue with people that have this plant. She grows like a beast, she's very unruly, but after a while people tire of her because she sticks out like a sore thumb in any space. She certainly doesn't enhance it, and she looks a bit unruly in the process. So your Philodendron paraiso has to be on this list. This is a plant that I don't think any interior decorator or anyone who wants who's particular about decor or just having a decorative aesthetic look will go for, just based off of her unruly growth profile. But if the jungle look, if you're not concerned about the aesthetics and you just want a jungly climbing plant, you like that whole bush jungle uncoordinated look, she will fit in perfectly. Okay, I'm curious to know your thoughts, Joe. She's a bit sunburnt. You know, the Nigerian sun has burnt her because I cannot find a space where she fits in. I've tried to grow her in my iconic veranda area, and she just made it look like a hot mess. I was like, no, you don't belong there. Sorry. So I've moved her to the backyard, and the backyard this time of the year in this country is literally hellfire. So I've also tried to grow her indoors, and she made this place look terrible. So do you own this plant, and have you found a way to style it, or have you also realized that this is a difficult plant to style? As usual, let me know in the comments. But as the plant icon that I am, I even find this challenging. Babes, can go now. Thank you. And I'm sure the Hoya girlies are going to come for me, but the truth will set you all free. Hoyas, for the most part, are not the easiest plant to style, if we're being honest. And in most cases, they can look really frightening, especially as they grow. I know the Hoya genus is an extremely wide genus containing thousands of species, some of them unclassified, yet to be discovered, all of that. So it's going to be a huge fallacy on my part to categorize every single plant in that genus as being difficult to style. Yes, I know that, and I admit we do have some Hoyas that are actually quite easy to style, and they do actually complement the space. The more common Hoyas, the canosas. So the Hoya princess, the Hoya crinkle, the Hoya compacta, the Hoya whatever those canosa, the common ones you find on your big box stores. Those ones, because they're a bit more common and accessible, they tend to be sold having more volume, and it's that volume that actually complements the space and makes them a beautiful decorative plant. However, the more uncommon ones that generally just have 1 vine, 2 vine, or 3 vines in a pot, they typically do not have the presence, do not have, the gravitas that can uplift or complement any space, to be honest. Also, the way Hoyas grow, and I don't think there's anyone out there, even if you're a Hoya head, I don't think there's anyone out there that comes out to say, I love the way Hoyas grow. No, because for the most part, the way they grow is that they push out these tendrils, these long tendrils that look like runners, and these tendrils tend to be bare before the plant decides one day, okay, let me fill it up with new leaves. Also, and this is something I learned recently, which even makes them more prime candidates for this list. So Hoyas are vining plants, right? But with your typical vining plants like your pothos, you can trail them downwards, and that is not going to impact their growth profile or stunt their growth in any way. However, with these Hoyas, you have to keep the tendrils growing upwards. If you somehow, place the tendrils growing downwards, which is the more pleasant view in my opinion, then that will actually stunt the growth of the Hoya, and it may not produce any leaves from those tendrils. You see how it can be challenging to make them look beautiful in a space? Hoyas, in my opinion, when they have that volume, when there's a lot of them in a pot, they are full ones, or ones that just have the presence like big leaves like your Sarawak, those ones are really easy to style and they complement pretty much every space. But the rest, those ones that have just 1, 2, 3 fangs, the ones with the obscure names, no. It is what it is the truth. I'm just, don't shoot the messenger. Just accept the truth for what it is. Okay, now this next one, I feel like a lot of us will agree. I think we're gonna have a consensus with this next one, and I have this babe right here. I've had her in my collection for a while. I've even started losing interest in her because of she just doesn't fit into any space. It's this babe. Oh, but she does look beautiful. She does look beautiful in this frame. But it's difficult to actually style this babe just based off of her group profile. I mean, look at how she looks in this pot. And this is typically what you will see when you place her in any corner. It's a Rhaphidophora decursiva, in case you didn't know. And what makes this plant quite difficult to style is the growth profile isn't very evident. So one isn't sure whether this is a climbing plant. Do I give her a pole? Do I give her some support? Do I put her up a trellis? Also, one isn't particularly sure. It's not very evident whether this is a trailing plant. Like I mentioned earlier, plants that have a definite structure to them, whether they are growing upwards or trailing downwards, or they are growing vertically upwards, these plants generally tend to be the easiest to style because we can easily place them in certain places and areas where their group profile will easily complement that space. Whereas with this one isn't entirely sure where to place her. So this is actually a crawling plant, and if I bring her closer, you'll be able to see where she is crawling on the surface pot. So it's a crawling plant, but yet it doesn't grow like your typical crawling plant. So there's that conflict as to, okay, where do I keep this? Now, I have seen when this plant grows and matures and it produces these beautiful like fenestrations, then it makes for a good plant that you can easily style because you kind of like have an idea. But while it's in its juvenile state, while it's in still this obscure state where it's trying to find itself, I found it really, really difficult to style and even to know what planter fits best with it and where to keep it as well. And I think that might be hindering the popularity of this plant. Where you see it being sold in a big box store, you don't automatically oh, this is gonna go on top of my shelf. Oh, this is gonna go on. You get what I mean? So yeah, Rhaphidophora decursiva. Now this next plant, the problem I have with this plant is that it looks too unruly. It looks too wild. It's a variegated epipremnum pinnatum, specifically a variegated one, because this is one of the few plants that I feel like the non-variegated one actually looks a bit more presentable, a bit more uniform than the variegated counterpart of this one. The variegated one there just seems to be a clash, so much of a clash in the coloration, and then the fenestration of this plant just looks wild, in my opinion. Now, if you're somebody who likes the jungle aesthetic, if you like the jungle vibe, you want your home to look like a jungle, this plant may work for you. I mean, it definitely gives off that wild vibe. But if you want a space that looks cohesive and looks a bit put together and looks a bit curated, then I feel like this plant will just make it off. I've tried to grow this plant indoors, and honestly, it just overwhelmed the space and just took over the space and made the space look really congested. I've also tried to grow it outdoors, and again, it just seems like a very imposing plant. It looks like a wild tree, so to speak. And yeah, so this is what is left of this plant, guys. Hold on. This is what is left. I took cuttings and I sold her off, and I've just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna grow this one single cutting. It's a bit dusty, sorry, but I'm just gonna grow this one single cutting in this jar and, you know, just let her be for the rest of her life. And I think that has been the case for a lot of people, especially in this part of the world, who have this plant. It just grows very unruly and looks very untamed, and they literally find themselves giving it out. This is also a plant that one can apparently grow trailing as well, but it doesn't look nice as a trailing plant. I feel like it even looks a bit more hideous when it is trailing. So no. Yeah. This next one is a Peperomia Hope Love. Yes, I remember I talked about this plant in one of my recent videos. I'm going to link that video in my description. And the issue I had with this plant was that, and I still do have that issue, is that the growth profile, it doesn't have a beautiful growth profile. It's one of those plants that when it is young, it looks really beautiful, cute, you know, but as it grows, the growth profile just turns into something hideous and rather frightening, actually. Like I pointed out in that video, there tends to be a lot of spacing between the leaf and the internodes, and it just ends up looking like a skeleton with bumps, a trailing skeleton with different bumps around it. Some of you pointed out that could be because I was growing mine in low light, and the low light was contributing to the legginess, which is a possibility, which happens when you grow certain plants in low light. But that isn't the case with this babe. I have picture evidence. I always grew this plant in a bright corner when I had it in my care, sometimes outdoors. At one point it was even in the veranda, yet it still assumed that growth profile, which just always made the space look off. Like I said, it looked like a dangling skeleton and honestly didn't complement the space, so I just got rid of her in my collection. Now, when it comes to legginess in plants, there's certain plants that when they look leggy, they actually even enhance the space. They even fit better in your collection. It makes them look a bit more beautiful, and we're going to talk about that in a sequel to this video. So just subscribe to the channel so you know what plants I'm talking about. I don't want to give them away. On the flip side, we have certain plants that when they are leggy, they can honestly make your space frightening. They can look really frightening and look off, which leads me to the last plant on this list. I kept this one last because there's a huge asterisk to it. It's a plant that can honestly enhance your space, beautify your space, make your space really look amazing. But also on the flip side, it can make your space look like a frightening a sight to behold, depending on how you grow it. Okay, I've kept you in suspense long enough. It's your Monstera Deliciosa. Now hold on, girlies. Depending depending on the type of Monstera you have. If you have the spreading Monstera, the one that doesn't need a pole to support itself and can support itself for an extended period of time without a pole, like your Thai constellation or your large form Monstera, not only is this going to be easier for you to manage, but it could also potentially complement your space without the need to incorporate a pole or a trellis that might make things a bit off, make things look a bit off in your decor, right? There's also the more standard and common climbing Monstera, which you can still get away with styling beautifully if you have it up a pole. It can still work. However, on the flip side, and we've talked about this on several occasions on this channel, I'm going to link the videos. If there are multiple vines of a climbing Monstera in a potted together like they're typically sold in your big box stores, then it can honestly turn into a nightmare, having to trellis, having to manage, and having to put them all together in a way that they look decent. It can become a frightening sight to behold and can make your collection and your space look unruly and terrible. Okay, so I feel like there's a certain skill set required to ensure that your Monstera, as it grows, looks beautiful, still continues to enhance your space, still continues to decorate your space. If you do not possess that skill set, eventually as that Monstera grows, and I feel like this is true for whether it is your climbing or your spreading Monstera, as it grows, it is just going to take over the space, overwhelm it, look like a hot mess, and become a frightening sight to behold, amongst other things. So that is why that had to be included in this list. Okay, now girlies, I had to rush this video because it's about to rain here. Like it's about to rain really heavily here, and I didn't want the rain to interfere with the lighting and the sound. But we've come to the end of this video. I'm curious to know your thoughts as usual. Drop them in the comments. Do you see reasons with me as to why these plants can be challenging to style in your home? Also, if you don't agree with me, feel free. This is a fun community where all opinions, as long as they are respectfully stated, are shared in the comments. So please share your opinions and let me know what you think about this video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.